I think almost like we sat for 3 hours, sir, in Secunderabad Club, if you remember.
Right, Karthik? It's always a pleasure meeting you, and how time flies by when we are together. Goes on to say to prove that we resonate very well.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I remember the time, if you remember when I first called you, when you were the director of the Telangana Police Academy. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this first conversation because I'm sharing it with you after a very, very long time. Now, I called you directly in your mobile and you told me that, just because you have the mobile number of a person, you should not be calling the person directly. You should first, call the landline. And I told that, I don't know why, because I told that, I always feel a deep level of closeness with the police department, and I always feel I'm calling a family member, and I did not know I have to be formal. And you laughed, and then we met, and the rest is history. It's almost like a very good association with you. And as I told you, sir, though, I meet a lot of officers in my workshop. There are very hardly, about 40 to 60 IPS officers that I'm very close to. And I am very happy to say that, I connect and I resonate the same vibes with you.
Just responding to what you mentioned, I will say two things. One is, a lot of studies, lot of research have now actually proved that multitasking is counterproductive. If you are trying to multitask, then essentially what is happening that your attention and your neurons are, shifting between one task and another, and there is a recovery phase. So it is advisable to give your undivided attention to one issue at a time. Therefore, and then your productivity increases. Once you have immersed yourself in it, you are able to make progress faster. But if you keep flitting between two, three tasks, your refractory time increases and your efficiency decreases. This is one thing. Second, so therefore, at the time when you rang up, probably I was in the midst of something intense and I was distracted. Second thing is, you in uniform services, we are very particular about courtesies and etiquettes and protocol. I would like, just as I'm talking to you now, and I'm interacting with you, and I'm very conscious of the fact that there will be large number of people who are executives from different places whose time is also very precious. Now, if we start taking call from others, it will be inappropriate and it will be basically lack of courtesy towards you. So perhaps that is why I mentioned at that point of time. But I'm always, if some prior appointment is taken, I'm always available, and this is how, entire 35 years of service in the IPS, I've reached out to public and all stakeholders in my lifetime. So just a bit of an aside on,
Yes,
I
yes.
do remember that. But
Sir,
then we have hit off. I realized later on that you're a wonderful guy. You're doing a great job, great public service. And despite not being in a position, in a position of authority in the government, you are, let me tell you, you're doing a lot more for the public than probably many of us in the service itself.
it really means.
So, yeah, we'll go ahead now.
You said this many a times, but it always really reinforces this strong feeling in me. And just a little pre-context to our conversation, because what we will be engaging, and I just would like to set a pre-context to it. I have always felt, cops and people in positions of power and authority, especially, that there is some deep past life connection that I have with all of them. And that has got everything to do with the Nadi Jyotisham guys, whom I met about 15 years back, where they said that, in your previous lives, you have been a Vaidya to all these people and they're all connected. And I have no reasons to disbelieve because I always had a very warm, wonderful association with them, with people like you. And just setting this pre-context quite essential for our conversation and for the viewers, especially because now this is as someone, who loves the IPS officers and especially the doctors, I find two very important aspects to be very, very vital. They say that the salary that an individual person takes largely determines what he can do or she can do in today's society in a very significant manner. And also it affects the overall self-esteem of that individual. So personally, I feel that the current salary that IPS officers are really receiving can be much, much higher. And if it can be much, much higher, how much can it be? Is something, I would like to ask think tanks like you and also your senior ranking officers like you who are of having immense reputation in the central level, because you worked in central departments, you have worked at the central level, and almost there's no cops in Hyderabad or Telangana who do not know you, even at the central level, who do not know you. And you are in the rank of the DG, which is the highest any which way. So I would like to know your thoughts on that, and also on the MBBS. If you look at it today, a lot of people whom when I meet, government hospital doctors, the salary that they're getting is hardly about 66,000 to 70,000, anywhere between this, and that after working for 6 to 7 years of the time. And at 70,000 rupees to 66,000 rupees, what would it be enough for them? Let's say if they have a family, what is it that they're going to do? Are they going to send their kids to good quality schools? Are they going to, able to afford, quality lifestyles? So all of these things essentially, makes me wonder whether the salary that these people are getting after cracking the toughest examinations in the country or at par in the world, is it sufficient? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Karthik, you are exactly right. I agree with you, but of course, the governments, whether the central government or the state governments, have their constraints in terms of resources. But to put the things in a certain context and perspective, IPS has been my, the final and the seventh job. Before that, I have worked in a central purpose sector undertaking in terms of, I was with Indian Oil Corporation. I have worked in customs and excise also as a Group 1 officer. I was also with a cooperative in UP, the place which I belong to, Lucknow, in what is called Parag, Pradesh Cooperative Development PCDF, Development Federation, Dairy Federation. And I was also with a state public sector enterprise, that is UPSRTC. So, and apart from that, I have worked in private sector, in MRF tires, in Patia computers. So before I came to IPS, which is an all India service, as it is called, IAS, IPS and IFS, I have worked in state and central public sector undertakings. I have worked in cooperative sector, and I have worked in private sector in a company like MRF Tires. I was there in 85 and 86, and I can tell you today the share value of an MRF tire, share is about, as I am told, about 75,000 rupees. And over the last 35 years, had I continued with the ESAPs and all, I would have been, crorepati. Having said that, I will also recollect one instance when I was, in Calcutta. I had gone on a trip, and one of my colleagues in MBA, who was a topper, and the civil services results were announced. Both of us had, appeared. For some reasons which I do not really know, he did not make it, and I got through. And this fascination or the involvement with civil services is like falling in love. And one who feels just like unrequited love. This guy, my friend, he wept the whole night. Karthik, I am not exaggerating. He wept the whole night for not making it through. And I got it, and because he had not made it and he was a very dear friend, मेरा भी थोड़ा जो खुशी था थोड़ा कम हो गया था. 15 years down the line, I had gone to meet him in USA. He is in a place called Orange County in Fullerton, which is a place where most of the Hollywood stars stay. He makes about, more than $500,000. He has got a swimming pool and the best of cars. And when I was sharing a drink with him in the evening, I said, Ravi, do you recollect that 1986 night? उस दिन रात को तुम रो रहे थे और मैं हंस रहा था. Now, after seeing all this around, when you are making a package of $500,000 and you have so much of things, I wish that night I was crying and you were happy. Perhaps I would have been in your place. So, yeah, you are right. The salaries which are paid at the top level in the governments, in the government of India, which is selected through the 7th level, so the pay commissions is very less. But that is because what is called a socialist model, which was accepted in the 50s. By virtue of that, and the government jobs, the ratio of the salary of the lowest to highest cannot exceed, 16. So at the lowest level in the government, when you call the, the pay commissions, if the salary is around 20,000, so 15 times of that becomes 3 lakhs. So this is of course, just a rough guideline, a benchmark, need not be strictly adhered to by the government for various reasons, because, almost 95% of the employees in government, be it state or central, are at different levels of class 4, class 3, class 2. And we in all India services or central services, will not constitute even 5% of the total government employees. Therefore, we have got relatively less weightage or less say. Contrast that with the private sector. Now, routinely, you will find that the ratio of the lowest paid in private sector to the highest may go up to a mind-boggling 300 to 400 times as compared to just 15 times in the government. So, though in terms of responsibility, in terms of criticality, in terms of decision-making implications, I would say in the government you are making far more important decisions with serious implications countrywide than what it would be in a private sector. Even then, the ratio of the socialist principle tends to kick in. And imagine, you would have read of the scams in the country and all. Today, these days in the papers, it is coming about Telangana, about a contract that have been given for the ORR. You have read of the Colgate scam. You have read of the 3G. I'm not going into the merits of things, whether there were, scams had truth in them or not. But you just focus on the decision making in these things. It was something like 200,000 crores. 2 lakh crores. Now an officer, a secretary rank officer who is giving inputs to the PMO, his salary is just, as I told you, 2,25,000 is the highest at the apex scale that we can. Plus DA, etc. is about 3,25,000. And he's taking decision which is worth 2 lakh crores. So that is something that needs to be factored in. Having said so, I would say that one joins civil services or the police service, not for money, though it is important, but the sheer satisfaction that you get in serving and reaching out to the publics. And factually speaking, at the entry level, a constable gets around 25 to 30,000, may vary from one state to another marginally. And an IPS officer, in his first posting, is getting around 56,000 plus DA, so that would be around 75,000, 80,000 rupees. Plus, of course, is entitled to free vehicle and some accommodation. So, if we convert them, if we monetize them, it will be roughly around 1,25,000. And many of them, I would say in my batch, we had 40 engineers, 5 doctors, 7 MBAs, including myself. We were making much more than what we do even today. Today, my daughter with 5 years of service in law, she is making as much as I am doing. My total package, which is the highest that a government servant, whether in IAS or IPS, can aspire for, is about 3,10,000 per month, which will be around 36,000, 37,000 per annum. That's about it. So yeah, it is an issue.
Did it ever come to your mind, sir, ever, if at all, how many times did it ever come to your mind that, the package that you're getting as an IPS officer could have been more? And have you pitched it at the right sources? Because you have access to the MHA, you might have access to the highest corridors. Have you tried to, present it in a tactical manner for the benefit of all the other IPS officers in the country as to how the packages can be enhanced? Did it ever occur to you? First, I want to know where did this thought ever come to your mind that what kind of a package am I getting?
Yes, it is very natural. See, I'll tell you, in Singapore, we know of the head of the government over there, Lee Won-Yuk and all. He had once said that the tragedy with India is that you attract the best brains in civil service and you pay them like peanuts. Whereas in Singapore, we attract only slightly above mediocre level talent, but we pay them at least 10% more than the highest in private sector. And he explained it by saying that the job of the government is control and regulation. And therefore, we do not require the best brains. The best brains should naturally go in private sector where you have to do innovation, you have to apply your ingenuity, creativity, and you have to take risks. Correct. Because you are investing money, you are putting your emotions, energy, and therefore, if it succeeds, you are entitled to good salaries. And therefore, in private sector, the salaries naturally are higher. But then in the job of the government is regulation and control. And if I do not have good salaries for them, then they are vulnerable to different types of influences which can bring distortions in the system. So Singapore, interestingly, does not want to attract the best talent. in the civil services or the government, but they pay them 10% more than the highest salaries to ensure that that their integrity
Ethically, and the
levels are
morale
good,
is
because
very
they
high.
are, yeah. Whereas contrast it with India, as I told you, here the civil services attract the best talent. You have IITians, you have the MBAs from the IIMs, you have doctors and all that. And when they enter the system and they find 5 years down the line, then they learn कि जैसे मैंने आपको अपने बैचमेट का ही बताया है, he is making $500,000. So naturally the comparison kicks in, and you do feel at times that perhaps it was not good. And therefore it is important that in India we create an ambience and ecosystem where salaries are at least competitive. I wouldn't say that they should be the best, because government simply, they have limitations of resources, but it should be competitive. If you want to have greater performance, along with that, you should have very, very strict accountability and very strong sense of strong norms regarding integrity, not necessarily only financial. Both financial and intellectual integrity are very, very important for a government, sir.
Very true, sir. And this thought just comes to my mind very spontaneously, and I want to know your observations about it. Now, recently I was, traveling to a place, and I happened to meet the topmost head of, the RBI. He was retired, Mr. Subbarao, and I happened to have conversation with him. He was also having breakfast, and I recognized him, and we started having, just sitting beside him, and I got to, very enlightening conversation, very nice conversation. But one thing that comes to my mind right now, as I speak with you, because his image also comes very sparking, is, can IPS officers, or the think tanks like IAS officers pitch to an RBI director that at the end of the day, money is like it's being printed. Now you have norms for it, right? You have essentially norms that, the number of goods and services which are there in that country. Based on that, the currency is printed. So there's like an established norm which has been set in all the centralized banks. Now, when it comes to giving salary to an IAS officer or an IPS officer, or to the bureaucrats or to the politicians, you've been the head of anti-corruption bureau, and you've been doing when you were there, you have done some phenomenally wonderful transformative work over there. And somewhere the correlationship between what a person earns and what is happening in the world and corruption, the triangular net, if it can be completely dismantled, can there be a pitch that can be given to RBI, or there can be like a separate system that can be created? Like today, if let's say the Director General of Police should be getting a salary of 1 crore per month. I'm just giving a hypothetical situation. Now, this 1 crore, where does it come from? It comes from the taxes of the people. So generally, people always look at what is the police department actually doing. It's unproductive. They say army is unproductive, but essentially police, army, or any other forces are essentially contributing to the safety and security and peacekeepingness of the society, without which no businesses in the world would ever exist. So if you look at it, the direct contribution is there because of law and order. Otherwise, there will definitely not be any productivity. There will not be any cars on the road, because then if you have people bombing roads here and there, people will not be interested in investing. People will not be interested in going out. So literally any industry, be it tourism industry, be it pharmaceutical industry, be it agrotech, be it biotech, be it fintech, be it any industry for that matter, automobile sector, it's only happening because of the law and order. Now, so this is the most productive sector in the whole world. Now, you cannot pitch it until and unless it is on ground, because on ground, people look at it. What is it that you are giving to the system? What is it that you're taking? So can there ever be a representation that be made where on special grounds, money can be printed for, the salary givings of certain people like IPS officers, IAS officers, and especially doctors? Because these are the most essential entities of the organizations. Now you go to a medical college today or medical hospital today, government medical hospital, they don't have, the basic facilities, many of them. Or they say we don't have money coming in. Or some of them We don't know what's happening to the money. So if there is large levels of, input coming in, because everybody says lack of resources means lack of money. So on special grounds, if certain special considerations are being kept, and I don't know how it is going to be implemented because there are lots of complicational loops, or unnecessary complications which, people create. But can this be a suggestion that can be given is what I would like to know your thoughts on.
Karthik, in fact, you have to a considerable extent answered the question that you tried to pose. I do agree with you that these issues need very careful attention and redressal by the government. I mean, having done MBA earlier and having studied HRD, after all, when it comes to adequate compensation, there are different measures or different parameters, which are basically taken into consideration. The criticality of the job, the level of expertise required for acquiring it, the level of intelligence required for acquiring it, the amount of time that you spend undergoing training or capacity building, the number of hours that you have devoted to it, the monetization of the implications of decision making in it. So all these factors at different levels in a government, in a organization, I would say, not a government organization, should be taken into account and actually are taken into account before deciding the compensation packages. Now, this should be equally applicable to the police as well as to the medical profession, though they appear to be very different. But as I mentioned to you earlier, that way back in 1980, I was studying in Motilal Nehru Medical College, and just to make a very, very brief comparison, to become a doctor, a plain simple MBBS vanilla doctor, you require 5.5 to 6 years. Compared to that, for the IIT, it's a 4-year course. MBA after graduation is a 2-year course. Civil services, even if you are a plain graduate, the entry level is about 21 years. So you can, after getting into 2 years of training, you become a civil servant at the age of 24 years. So I personally feel that amongst all these professions, it is the medical profession which is getting the worst deal.
Correct.
In terms of investment of times, it is almost, as I told you, 6 years just to become a plain MBBS doctor. If you go for PG, MD or MS and then you go for DM, postdoc, it is completely 10 saal ka tapasya to aapka hai. Then in terms of criticality, you are dealing with the lives of people. Your decision making impacts not only, the health, the prognosis, diagnosis, the lives of people. So nothing more dearer, more sacred to a human being than his life.
Correct.
So he's dealing with life on. Then in terms of responses, he has to be at times available round the clock in the trauma centers. Be it can be even a delivery, it can be a heart attack, it can be an accident. So his availability has to be there at many times, almost round the clock. Then in terms of expertise or core competence, the doctor's profession, the way he studies for the first 6 years, even more, is very, very tough. I have myself done it and I know it is very, very tough. To me, the toughest book which I have read in my life is Gray's Anatomy. Tougher than any of the books which I read for civil service. Nothing tougher than that I have come across in my life. Then, as I mentioned to you about long hours of work is there. And then the rate at which you have to upgrade knowledge in many professions. Unfortunately, I'm saying in civil services, people think, ek baar aa gaye, to chalo ab theek hai. So people, give up on updating their knowledge and all. I am an honorable, or I would say dishonorable exception, that I went abroad for 2 years, did my advanced masters in international studies, did another course in USA. 4 years I was studying. But most officers, they do not. But in medical profession, you have to continually upgrade your knowledge and systems of procedure, technology, more and more sophisticated equipment is coming, robotics and all. So in all parameters, I feel medical profession deserves much better than what they are getting, particularly in the Sarkari job. You go to a government hospital, as you have rightly said, that a doctor is getting around 70,000 or 80,000, and Usmania mein chale jaएं, Gandhi chale jaएं, Delhi mein AIIMS mein chale jaएं, you will find him to be handling at least 100 to 150 patients on a daily basis.
Correct.
I was in US for 2 years. I was in Australia for 2 years. My own colleagues, batchmates, others from Andhra Pradesh are practicing there. They don't see more than 15 patients every day. On an average, it is 10 patients, and they are making comfortable $300,000 to $400,000 per annum. 10-15 से ज़्यादा नहीं थे. So see the contrast. Now coming, so but again the issue is that doctors is a very ministerial community. They cannot lobby with the government. They cannot say कि we and they are all very decent, nice souls. पढ़ते लगते हैं अपना काम कर सकते हैं. Likewise in government, what happens every 10 years there is a provision for what is called a pay revision commission. So a pay revision commission is made. I think the next one will probably come by 24-25 and it should be effective from 1st January 26. So when a pay revision commission is constituted by the government of India, large number of associations of employees, they give their representation highlighting their contribution to the national nation building, exchequer, or the type of duties they are doing, and the pay revision commission takes a call. Now obviously the pay revision commission, being a government body, has to ensure that it is within the budget. You cannot spend beyond what you are earning, and that is an issue. Now I can tell you what I'm going to tell you now going to be politically incorrect, but this is a reality in India. At the lower level of employees, government employees, both at state and center, they are far highly paid than the higher level. For example, a driver, if once a person gets selected as a driver in Sarkari job, after 15-20 years, he'll be comfortably making around 50,000 rupees. Now you can go in Hyderabad and take a driver. You will comfortably get a driver for 15 to 20,000 rupees. Even if you take two drivers, if you want to take two drivers, they'll be happy to do job for you for about 13-14,000. So for two drivers, you are not spending more than 30,000 rupees. But in a government job, you will be paying him after 10 years around 50,000 rupees. So there are large number of jobs which can be outsourced, including in the police. There have been studies done that non-core or non-specialized functions should be outsourced, like your house management, your housekeeping management thing. These can be outsourced. And that will save money for the government. But then what happens? Once you start outsourcing, then the politics kick in. You have employees association at the lower levels who, because of the sheer numbers, put pressure on the government. आप पढ़ रहे हैं every day the main issue, whether it is at the central level or state, is jobs, employment. Governments are being increasingly accused of not filling up vacancies, of having this government had showed 2 crore jobs per annum. It has not happened. But it is a malady across the country, center or states, irrespective of the political party in power. They face issues because government jobs at the lower levels, which are in terms of percentage and absolute number is very high, are far more paid than their comparative, I would say, employees in the private sector.
It's so enlightening.
And the top level, which is which is vested top level people, a IAS officer who is of the rank of, I would say, joint secretary and above in the government of India, or an IPS officer of the rank of IG and above, the total number in the entire country is not more than, I would say 5,000-6,000. That's all. Across the country, inclusive of states. So this 5,000-6,000 people hardly make a lobby. They cannot force the government to increase their salaries. Whereas in private sector, once he goes, he gets paid for all these contributions that he makes. Contrast with the other employees. I mean, railway itself is 27 lakh people. 90% are as I told you, lower and middle. They form a strong, a vote bank also. So these are complex issues, and therefore it's not easy for the governments to take a decision. But then that is how the governments are now handling or tackling these issues. They are increasingly going for what is called outsourcing, which is not a very acceptable solution to a large number of unions. They feel because of outsourcing, regular jobs are not being created. But again, as I said, it is happening across the country, at the state level, at central level, as a suboptimal solution to the problem of taking care of budgeting for the salaries. So, and again, what happens, since you are in leadership positions, you are part of the uniform services, there is only a limit to which you can represent to the government. You don't want to create embarrassment for the government. You don't want to come out in the media or the public and say, nahi, humko zyada do. Because then as leaders, you are supposed to exercise restraint and set an example for others. So this is what I have to say. And yeah, about Mr. Subbarao,
Yes, sir. Mr. Subbarao, what were you saying?
He has been RBI governor, and today Mr. Shakti Kant Das is there, who's another retired IAS officer. One of the CMDs of, rather the CMD of the biggest insurance company in India. I don't want to name him nor his company, but he is the CMD of the biggest insurance company. He was speaking to me the other day. He's located in Bombay, and he was telling me, Santosh, we were batchmates in MBA.
Okay.
And he was telling me, Santosh, yaar, can you believe it? You are still getting the highest of Sarkar, 2,25,000 apex scale plus your DA. But today, and so therefore, you are getting around 3,25,000, whereas I am getting just about 2,90,000. And he says, if today I join any of the private sector insurance company, my package will not be less than 2 crores. Correct. So ditto for the MDs of State Bank of India or Union Bank and all. These very CMDs who are in this, if they join HDFC or ICICI or HSBC, their packages will be at least 10 to 15 times more. So, this is the cost that you have to pay for rendering public service. And tell me, I have been in anti-corruption bureau for a very, very long time, and I have dealt with large number of sensitive cases. Even as a chief vigilance officer in BSF, I have dealt with cases running into hundreds and thousands of crores. Let me tell you, Karthik, something very interesting. What surprises me is not the corruption in India. What surprises me is that despite an ecosystem or an ambience where government servants are paid so poorly, despite that, you find a very, very sizable number of them, particularly leadership positions, who continue to retain integrity. Amazing. Despite all heavy odds, they continue to retain integrity and discharge their duties to the best of their ability, both in terms of, again, I'm saying financial integrity. That is something which is amazing. Some of the finest officers in the IAS and IPS, they are men of great rectitude. And despite all the temptations that they have, apart from temptations, the pressures that they face from various quarters, they continue to retain their objectivity and integrity and do their best. And these are the unsung soldiers in the system. They retire and then they fade away without any murmur or having any qualms of that they were not adequately compensated nor recognized for that. So this is something so interesting, and I think the spiritual elements in India's rich heritage, probably they draw their strength from that. I do not know, but it really is something surprising. I'm not talking about myself, that I am a great guy. A person's reputation is not built by what he says about himself. It is built by what others think about him. So I will not talk about myself, but I have seen number of officers.
I can talk about you, sir, because I've known you for a very long time. I can definitely talk about you have mentioned and how much you resonate, especially it's so compassionate of you and also so thoughtful about you when you mention about the salary that is being given to a doctor is very, very less. So as we conclude, I would like to know from you, sir, what do you think should be the salary of an MBBS doctor in a government hospital compared to what they are right now taking 66,000? What do you think should a salary be according to you? I mean, there'll always be debates. There'll always be people countering it. There'll always be people telling your, garibi kitni hai, all of that. But considering, the toughest examination that they're cracking and the number of people they're seeing in the OPD, despite, not having, like when you look at an IPS officer, at least an IPS officer knows that, nobody is going to play around with him. If he calls a person, there'll be people in line, to come and do the repair. The government machinery will be there. But a doctor is calling that, the AC is repaired. It will take at least, 10 days to 15 days for the PWD people to come and even attend to them. Despite they being a cardiac surgeon or a neurosurgeon or an orthopedic, after being an MD. And in the middle of the night, they can be called anytime because a specialist is 24-hour on call. That's what, they sign up for. So irregular sleep cycles, pediatric specialist can be called anytime. I mean, needless to say the challenges that they're going through and the salary that they're getting. According to you, what do you think, sir, as we conclude? What should be this?
So, Karthik, you have already, I would say very nicely delineated all the parameters which a HRD organization would factor in for deciding upon the compensation package. But I'll just reiterate, as you say, they come through a very, very difficult competitive examination. And therefore, they are some of the finest brains, one of the most intelligent people who join this profession. Second thing, in terms of duration of the training, as I said, around 506 years to become a plain vanilla MBBS doctor, goes up to 10, 12 years also. That is the second thing. Third thing, in terms of importance or criticality of the job, a doctor is dealing with the lives and health of people. Nothing is more precious to an individual than his life and, of course, his health. Fourth thing, of course, is the technical knowledge required, highly technical in nature, very specialized type of job. Fifth thing is, he has to be on call for very, very long hours, and in emergencies, he can be called upon at any time of the day or night. Seventh thing is that the huge number of patients that he is required to or called upon to attend, running into, at least 100 patients per day. So now if you see, I mean, a very back of the envelope or thumb rule, even for every patient a doctor sees, and he's charging just a very, very nominal 50 rupees, it becomes 5,000 rupees. Multiply it with, 25, and that becomes 1,25,000 rupees. So this is the minimal. Why I'm saying it is a minimal? Because doctors are working for not the standard, 7 to 8 hours. They are working for long, far longer than what, and any other government servant or would be working. And so I would say that at the very entry level, his package should not be less than 1.5 lakhs, and it should not be linked. It should not be linked to the levels, as NB says, in the pay commissions for IAS, IPS officers, because somehow once that happens, it is not something only with doctors. I feel happening in the field of IT. This is a different topic. I'm not talking about the cyber crime and economic offenses and how they impact national security and their economic impact. That probably will take it up separately. But there is a tendency, or it is inherent in the system, that all these salary packages of different government organizations and different levels are linked to, or with the All India services. And the unwritten rule is that it should not go beyond what All India services officers get. It should be below it, at least 1 or 2 levels below it, including the CMD of the insurance company I was talking about. Same thing is applicable to the doctors in government jobs also. So there is a need for an absolute delinking of certain specialized services, particularly the medical profession, from the so-called adherence to the glass ceiling imposed by the levels of All India service officers, which themselves are rather inadequate, as I mentioned.
I resonate with you, sir.
So,
this is the number I had in my mind also.
So great minds think alike. Pardon for sounding a little immodest, but this is the minimum he should get at the entry level. I can also, now that we have broached the subject of the compensation packages for doctors, I will also mention that in the private sector, things are even worse. The salaries which corporate hospitals are offering at the entry level or middle are much worse than what they are getting in the government.
I agree with
you. So this is also something which, because again, in the private sector, the focus is on bottom line. And a lot of distortions have come in the private sector, in the corporate hospitals, which need to be looked into. I would say, like law and order maintenance and crime, etc., health should be given far more importance by the government. There is a need to open more and more medical colleges, more and more hospitals. And purely as a apolitical person, I would say that over the last 7-8 years, this present government, the central government, has done a great job in terms of opening medical colleges and hospitals across the country. As I told you, I was in Lucknow, I was in Allahabad Medical College in 1980. And till about 2010, that is even after a lapse of 30 years, UP had only 7 medical colleges. That is all. But over the last 7-8 years, I'm told the number has been increased to about 25-30. I don't have the exact figure. So, which is a big jump. And this is happening across the country. Even state governments are also increasingly realizing that there is a need to have more government hospitals, government medical colleges. So, it's a work in progress. And this health is one field which neither the state government nor the government of India should outsource to corporate, because a lot of studies have shown that the expenditure, the pocket expenditure of an average citizen in India on health-related issues are increased phenomenally. It is much higher than what you have in Europe, in USA. USA is a very, very expensive country when it comes to health. But even then, an average Indian pays more as a percentage of his total package. Government should pay a lot of attention, and it will give them a lot of political mileage also. Anything else that I can mention? I'm not able to. Again, I think I'm losing you. Somehow.
From your side, can you just check?
I'm not able to hear you again, Karthik. Yeah, now it's better. Now it's better. Yeah, please go ahead. Again, Karthik. Yeah, now it's better. Now it's better.
Now
yeah,
it's better.
Please go ahead.
Okay, dismantled because there was a speed disconnection issue from your end, I guess. So the internet speed variation.
Okay.
So you were mentioning
right.
last 1 minute, I think it got interrupted. But I feel
exactly.
I think we can edit that. That's not an issue. So nice to hear your thoughts, sir. And I completely resonate with you when you talk about what the present government has done. But I have kept myself restrained. I have restrained myself from speaking anything good or bad about the current government, especially because I've had multiple backlashes, and people are like making me their enemy the moment I talk something good about Modi or BJP. I don't know what crime have I done. फिर मैंने सोचा कि मुझे मिल क्या रहा है भाई, गालियां ही मिल रहे, मैं थोड़ी बात क्यों करूं इसके बारे में. So that's another topic, sir, altogether. But as we are concluding, what would you think, sir, should be the salary of an entry level IPS officer? Because then they will think that हमारी तो बात आपने की ही नहीं. You started with our topic and आप तो हमें भूल ही गए. So what would you think, sir, should be a justifiable salary for an IPS officer? Because I know a lot of IPS officers, they would like to, come and play in specific golf courses. And all those are not actually included, in the government packages and the services which are being provided. And they would definitely like to, provide good education. Because unlike in US, here in India, if you are born, if you have to provide good education in good Cambridge kind of a medium, or an international school by any standards, where the extracurricular activities of an individual person or an overall well-being of a child is actually being groomed well, naturally they have to go on paying, like from the time the child is being sent to school to the time the child is being educated, you go on paying your money. So all those things are not being included from the government side. So what would you think if the IPS officer has to spend, money from his pocket at the end of the day for his good lifestyle, or, meet with the expectation, because he's seeing his colleagues in companies and they're doing very well. They're playing golf. They're, going and, going for foreign vacations. This guy has to go to, and feel worthwhile, and legitimate in a wonderful manner. What would you think should be the salary of an entry level IPS officer? And
see, I will, yeah. I will not be. It will not be appropriate on my part to confine myself alone to IPS, because IPS is one of the 3 All India services, IAS and Indian Forest Service being the other 2. Plus, in the central services also, they play a very important role: income tax, customs and central excise, railways. As I said, there are about 25 to 30 such services, All India services and central services, and all of them in their respective fields are doing a great job in terms of nation building. So it has to be a collective thing, not just IPS alone. And I would say that probably there is a need for the government, and now that the 8th pay commission would be maybe just about a year and a half from now, to have a look at the Singapore model, where try to pitch in the salaries of the government servants at different levels to what is being offered in the private sector. So it should be competitive. It should be linked to what is being offered at comparable levels in the private sector.
What's the
While
magic
saying
number,
so,
sir?
have to
What's the
keep.
magic number?
Yeah. I mean, magic number. I mean, there is really, I can't see. I mean, I'll tell you today. Today, in a city like Hyderabad or even in Delhi, you cannot get a decent 3 to 4 bedroom apartment for less than 2 crores. This is the minimum I'm telling you. It goes up to even 5 to 6 crores in some places. So at an average of 3 crores. Now there are models which relate that your investment in a housing or accommodation should not be more than 3 to 4 years of your total service. Assuming that a government servant, an all India service officer, a central service officer is working for say 35 years. So 10% becomes 3.5 years. Now today, at the entry level, if it entry level, I told you it's around 90,000. Highest level it is 3 lakhs. So let us take the middle figure of about 1.5 lakhs or 1.6 lakhs. So effectively, on an average, an all India service officer is getting 20 lakhs, middle level 20 lakhs per annum, which means if we have to peg in that he is investing 3.5 years, 10% of his total on accommodation, it becomes 3.5 years. Right now, in 3.5 years, he's making roughly around 75 lakhs, which actually should be around 2.5 to 3 crores to enable him to buy a decent accommodation for him at the end of his career. I'm talking about the present levels, what you can say the net present value of it. So accordingly, if we have to see that it is costing say around 3 crores, his 3.5 years package should not be less than that. This is the standard, back of the envelope or rule of the thumb thing which I'm saying. Because after all, today education has also become very, very expensive.
Right.
So this is what I would say.
So very happy. I hope it comes true. And I will be very joyful for everyone. And it was so wonderful of you to, in fact, I don't know how I forgot, because every person, including people working in income tax, people working in IAS, people working in IPS, and 30 other departments, as you said, they're like everybody are contributing for the nation building. And I'm sure everybody will be quite happy with the golden magic number that you have said. And I'm looking forward for such amazing, meaningful conversations with you, sir. It's always a pleasure. And just that, we are doing it online. Sometimes, when we meet also, we should record.
Yeah. Pleasure entirely, man. I really enjoyed conversing with you. And I wish you and all the people who are there in this group the very first, very best. And I'm sure that they'll continue to make good contribution and with greater commitment in the coming years to the nation building. It should truly be an Amrit Kal, irrespective of the political party.
So thoughtful of you. So thoughtful of you. And looking forward to seeing you smiling and glowing all the time. Have a wonderful day, sir. Good day.
Good day. All the very best.
Thank you.